Very excited to be with you, great coaches. Wrestling Mindset here to bring you a presentation on what you can be doing as a coach to make you better, to make your athletes better. Today, we're going to be talking about the Coach's Mindset Guide. Okay, so this is our 10th mindset lesson that we take our individuals through, and it's very important. When we look at our wrestlers, we're looking at the individual who is impacted by their parents, their coaches. So there's an environment that's going on around the wrestler. That's important to know. Now, when I did my master's degree thesis, I have 2 master's degrees, one in clinical psychology. I'm a school psychologist, also in exercise science and sports psychology. My research was published in the International Journal of Wrestling Science, and that was on perfectionism and anxiety in wrestlers. And we found, not too surprisingly, that the wrestlers that were more perfectionistic, everything had to be just right. They got more nervous, not surprisingly, and they wound up performing worse in competition. So when you break down perfectionism, it wasn't just a blanket term. There was 6 different subscales to perfectionism, and 2 of them had to do with parents, perceived parental expectations and perceived parental criticism. And that had a negative impact on performance. In other words, that was positively related with anxiety. The higher your perceived parental criticism, the higher your perceived parental expectations, the more nervous wrestlers got, and they did worse. So what I thought with that, and I've seen this over and over, we've worked with tens and thousands of wrestlers across the country. We found that it's the same thing with coaches. If the athlete themselves feels like the coach is putting too much pressure by having too high of expectations, or too high of a critical level, criticism being too strong, that athlete is going to feel nervous and they're going to perform worse, right? It works for parents. It should also work for coaches. And indeed, we see that is the case. So basically, I jumped right into this because I feel like this is something that most coaches are not aware of. Now, we're not saying the objective criticism level. We're not saying the objective expectations of the coaches. We're saying perceived. So even if the athlete perceives your criticism is too strong, or if the athlete sees that perceives that your expectations are too high, that's when they're going to start feeling the pressure. So what can you do as a coach? I mean, ultimately, that's why you're here. Obviously, you're already one of the coaches that really cares and probably needs this the least. That's the interesting thing about coaches conventions. The coaches that go to it usually are the ones who need it the least. And the same thing with parenting books. Usually the parents that read parenting books, they need them the least, right? Other people need them. But nonetheless, we all know the biggest room in the world is the room for improvement. So that's why we're all here. So I'm going to give you 5 questions that we ask in our Coach's Mindset Guide that are going to help you get on the same page with your athletes, become a better communicator with them, and ultimately help them perform at their highest level for them. So 5 questions you ask each one of your wrestlers. And you could even do this. You could break the team into multiple groups. Some go with one of the assistant coaches, some go with the other assistant coach, some go with you. But here's the questions that you would ask. Number 1, what am I doing that helps you mentally? What do I do that helps you mentally? So in order for an athlete to answer that question, they need to first ask themselves, what is it that helps me mentally? What do I like? What works for me? That's the first question they have to ask. What works for me mentally that other people say to me? And then what do you say to me specifically that helps me mentally? And again, it's not like we've just worked with dozens of wrestlers. We haven't just worked with hundreds, not thousands, but at this point, tens and thousands of wrestlers. We've been doing this for over 13 years. Again, you know the resume. We work with the Olympic team. We work with multiple UFC fighters. We work with, national championship teams across the country. Minnesota worked at St. Cloud State for many years at this point. They won their first national title. The second year we were working with them, they won another 5 since then. But this is what we're saying. Number 1, what am I doing that helps you mentally? So have the athlete answer that question honestly, because that's something you want to do more of. Now, the second question is, what is it that I might be doing that's inadvertently hurting you mentally? So the athlete has to think, what are some of the things that my coach is saying to me that I don't like, that don't jive well with me? Maybe if it's putting too much pressure in a certain way, is it talking too much about technique, too little about technique? Is it focusing too much on the records, the rankings, the seedings, predictions? What is it that my coaches might do that inadvertently hurts me? And I say inadvertently because obviously we know the coaches, you have nothing but the best intentions of your athletes. No coach, I don't think there's any coaches out there that are twisting their mustache with a master plan to ruin their wrestlers' lives. We don't see that, right? That's not the case. But sometimes we might be doing something that's inadvertently hurting the athletes. Let me give you an example of me as an older brother. So now I was an assistant coach at Springfield for 2 years while I was doing my master's degree. Springfield College, I was getting my master's, and also I was coaching the team. I made a lot of these mistakes. Yelling too much. Coming from an Italian family from the Northeast, that was something that I was used to. That was par for the course. We speak very fast. We speak very loud. We yell. So I would see that was one of the things I was doing that was maybe putting too much pressure. The athletes felt too much pressure. And what they needed more, a lot of them, not all of them, they needed me to slow down a little bit more, relax, speak easier with them. And that would be helpful. Another thing I could tell you I did wrong as an older brother, both of my younger brothers, they also wrestled. So me, my brother Jeff, my brother Greg, we all wrestled in college. Jeff and I were nationally ranked, all Ivy League wrestlers, ranked in the top 20 in the country. Greg was wrestled at Rutgers all 5 years, two-time academic All-American, beat multiple NCAA finalists, and he was ranked as high as 6th in the country. And last year when he was in Italy, he was training with Abraham Cagnetto before the Olympics. And Abraham Cagnetto just took 3rd. He took a bronze medal out in Tokyo. And my brother was his workout partner. Anyway, I realized I kind of blew it for my middle brother, Jeff, when he was in the state finals. I hate telling the story, but it's so important I tell it because it gives great information here. And it's a teachable moment. And that's the most important. But he was in the state finals against the guy who, so my brother was the top seed. And this is someone who was only a sophomore. My brother was a senior. And he beat this guy in practice a lot. I'll give you the name. His name was Darion Caldwell, but he was only a sophomore at the time. So he wasn't the Darion Caldwell that we all know of now in that sense. But nonetheless, my brother had him in the state finals. He was someone he knew he could beat in practice. And, you know, they got in the state finals. And my brother, before the match, I didn't know any better. I was just thought, okay, I'm the older brother. What do I do for my brother who's probably going to be in the state finals? And I thought about the Hollywood movies like Any Given Sunday or you know, all the any of the movies, the movie Miracle. The coach gives a motivational speech, and then where there's a heartfelt speech, father and son, or brother and brother, or teammate and teammate. You know, you figure that's what you should do. Wrong. That's like shooting yourself in the foot with a large gun. I always say everything is important, but nothing is special. 9 times out of 10, if you make a wrestling match special, you'll do worse. Most people. You know, actually, Darion Caldwell might be one of the few people, and he might be the 1 out of 50 people that can make a match bigger and he'll perform better. So it's funny I'm using this example, but the point is it's so individualized. That's why we need this coach's questionnaire, because we need to know what works for each athlete. But nonetheless, Caldwell might be a guy who could put more pressure on himself and do well. My brother was the opposite, like most people. So before the match, I had a speech memorized. I said it to him. We were both hugging and crying. And this is about a half hour before he took center mat in front of 16,000 fans at Boardwalk Hall in Atlantic City, New Jersey, where, you know, they have Miss America, where Mike Tyson fought Michael Spinks for the heavyweight championship of the world. So, I mean, this is a big time venue. And I gave him this motivational speech. And looking back, and he came out nervous. My brother wound up losing in the state finals. And I can't help but wonder if what I said to him could have hurt him, because I know he looked very nervous. He didn't look like himself when he was out there competing. So we need to know that, right? 9 times out of 10, a wrestler will tell you that just treat it the same. I do better when I treat it the same, when I don't make it into a big deal. A lot of wrestlers are what we call practice room wrestlers. They do a lot better in practice than in a match. So we need to know that. So we need to understand this. So question number 2 is, what am I doing that might be inadvertently hurting you? Have them write it down. And then obviously to the best of your ability, you try to meet that athlete where they're at. So let's say let's use my brother and Darion Caldwell. If my brother filled this out, again, still very good. Top 20 wrestler in college, Darion Caldwell, NCAA champion in college, right? So you have 2 guys who are very good wrestlers, could have 2 totally different temperaments. My brother might have said, coach, it hurts me sometimes when you tell me about the rankings, the records, the seedings, the predictions. Maybe Darion Caldwell says, it hurts me when you don't, or you might not be aware of this, coach, but if you say, hey, it's no big deal, that hurts me because then I don't bring my A game. So for me, I need you to fire me up, or I need you to put pressure on me. So two different guys, but you want to know the mindset of each of them. And it's one thing as a coach to assume that. It's another thing to have an active conversation with your athlete. And also that becomes that becomes the beginning. This exercise should become the beginning of an ongoing conversation where athletes are communicating with their coaches communicating with the athletes. So you could give them what they need, especially your best wrestlers, especially them. You really need to know them, but really all the wrestlers on your team. Question number 3. How do you need me to treat you before? I'm getting ahead of myself. This is question 4. I'll just go with this one. I went out of order. The order really doesn't matter. But since I started saying, how do you need me to treat you before a match? So you ask your wrestler, how is it that you need me to treat you before a match? And here's some examples we actually listed on our curriculum. And this is something you want to get a hold of. You want our wrestling mindset curriculum because it's very wrestling specific mindset. So it's all lined up there and it's all for a purpose. Again, we've been doing this for a while, tens and thousands of wrestlers we've helped in teams. So we have the multiple choice there for a reason. It's to prompt their thinking. It's to get them thinking about these answers. How do you want me to treat you before a match? Do you want me to yell, fire you up, make you mad? Maybe a little slap in the face like Abel used to do to some of his guys? Do you need me to joke around and talk about anything other than wrestling? Do you need me to give you a lot of technical advice? Or do you need me to lay off of you completely? So we have them there just to get the athlete thinking of different ways that you as the coach could treat them. Now, the get me mad, fire me up, slap me in the face, option A, most wrestlers don't pick that. But I like that to be an option so the coach can see that it is there. And some athletes do pick that. You might have some wrestlers that are just naturally lazy. They're just too laid back and they need to get fired up. Or you might have a wrestler who they're getting taken down in the first period over and over. They get taken down first over and over. Maybe they're not motivated enough right away. It could be the opposite. It could be they're over anxious, and that's why they're getting taken down. So that's why I want to ask this question. But how do you need me to treat you before a match? Question number 4, which is technically question number 3, but the order doesn't matter. How do you like corrective feedback? Each wrestler, you need to know their sensitivity level. And it's pivotal that each wrestler, as a person, know their personal sensitivity level. That is critical for their future marriage, if they're called to marriage. That's critical to their relationships with their friends. It's going to be important for them to communicate with people. Are you very sensitive? Are you a little sensitive? Are you not sensitive at all? So here's the categories we break it down into. How do you prefer me to give you corrective feedback? A, very direct, blunt. Just tell me what it is. So some wrestlers will want you to say, hey, if you don't work on your defense, you're going to lose. If you don't practice leg counters, you're never going to get out on bottom. Some wrestlers that works for. And if that's them, you want to know that, because some coaches, they make the mistake of being overly positive or overly explaining things, when some wrestlers just tell me. That's good. That saves you time. Not all wrestlers are like that. Not even maybe most wrestlers are like that. In fact, some of your best wrestlers might be the most sensitive people on the team. We've seen that over and over and over again. The point is, you want to ask the question. You don't want to just leave it to chance. Don't assume. And you want to make this, when you're asking these questions with them, you want them to feel comfortable answering in the most honest way. So you want to let them know, I'm not judging you for your answers. Okay, so option A is very blunt. Tell me like it is. Option B is maybe I'm a little more sensitive. So maybe give the sandwich approach. Give me a positive, then give me the critique, and then give me another positive. Or, I like it to be a little bit, I like your critique for me to be a little bit more positive. Option C would be very positive. I need the critique very positive because I tend to be a more sensitive person. It's important that your wrestler has the courage and the mental toughness to be able to say that to you. That's a mentally tough thing to say. It seems like it's mentally weak. It's not. It takes a lot of mental toughness for the wrestler to say, you know, I'm a pretty sensitive person, so I need the critiques that you give me to be very positive. So you want to let them feel like they can answer that question honestly. Okay, so that's that question. Now we jump to question 4, or what is maybe question? Yeah, no, it's question 5 here, and that is, how soon after a match would you like me to give you corrective feedback? How soon after a match? Some wrestlers prefer immediate feedback about either how they did or technical strategies. Some wrestlers that makes them mad, they're not even listening at that moment. So some might say later on in the day, like maybe not right after the match, but later on in the day. Other wrestlers might say the next day. I mean, look, you're the coach, so at some point you have to give them technical feedback. But we ask this question because we know there are a lot of wrestlers out there who are dissatisfied a little bit with the relationship they have with their coach because this is not handled in the best way for them. So you want to know as a coach, this is a simple thing you could do to them. This is not a make it or break it. Whether you give them the feedback that moment after they come off the mat, later on in the day or tomorrow, it doesn't make that much of a difference unless a wrestler says, yeah, you know, this is a really big, I mean, as far as memory is concerned from a psychological perspective, you're going to remember. It's not going to affect the memory. Not that I know of anyway. If there's research that's counter to that, I'm very open to changing that stance, but that's where I'm at right now. That's what I've seen. So the point is this, as the wrestler gets older, this might be different for an elementary school wrestler, because the next day they might not even be thinking about wrestling. So you might want to give them the feedback right away so it's fresh in their mind. But once you start getting to the high school, college level, losses usually sting. If they made a mistake, they usually know they made a mistake. So at this level, you want to give them a little bit more of a say in how you coach them. And now with this whole exercise we're saying here, what we're not saying is athlete and coach are equals. That's not the case, okay? My coach always told me, he was an Olympic coach, he would say, I'm up here and you're here. After practice, we could be friends. But during practice, in our coaching relationship, it's coach and then it's athlete. There is a hierarchy. That authority structure is important. That authority structure is good for the athlete. That's what they need. What the athlete doesn't need is another buddy on the team. So, but that being said, we don't want it to, the hierarchy is in place, but we don't want to make it sound like too authoritarian, right? It's good to, as the athlete, just like parenting, as your kid gets older, you don't parent them the same way as you do when they were 5. Right? You have more of a conversation. It doesn't mean that conversation is going to be, oh, hey, now I agree with you. It might still be, you have to do what I told you, but it's going to be expressed in a different way. And you are going to hear them out more because now they understand a little bit more about themselves. Whereas a 5-year-old doesn't really understand much about themselves. So this mindset exercise, it's a great thing to do. Like I said, it's going to really help with mitigating anxiety and making wrestling a much more exciting, happy experience. I can tell you, there's a lot of wrestlers that they lose the love for the sport, not because they don't like the sport of wrestling, but because the coach-athlete relationship is not optimal. I've seen it. I've seen it at the college level. I'm not going to mention names, but I can tell you, there's people on my team that I competed with at the University of Pennsylvania that should have been national final. One guy in particular could have been a national finalist, but the main problem was not wrestling. He was an All-American the one year, but he wasn't the last year because there was a issue with the coach, because him and the coach didn't see eye to eye. And I've seen that with many, many good wrestlers. And a lot of it stems from the lack of communication. And this exercise that we give, this is just one of our 80 mindset lessons, but this is a great way to open up the lines for communication. And it's not just friendly conversation, as I said before, it's a goal-directed collaborative interaction. We have this worksheet, so you'd be able to go through this with the athlete. They would be able to even fill it out on their own, and then you guys can go through it in person. Now, If some of you were at our Wrestling Mindset Coaches Convention this summer, which quite possibly could have been one of the greatest wrestling conventions ever, and we had Dan Gable, John Smith, I think 6 or 7 other Olympic gold medalists, several other Olympic finalists. So Gable was talking about, I asked him a question about when he would speak to the coaches, not to the coaches, he would speak to his athletes, high school coaches. Those of you that know about how Dan Gable coached, he was very open to what are his people, how do I make this athlete tick? How do I get the most out of this athlete? And Gable spared no effort in trying to get to the bottom of this. Gable would ask their parents, their girlfriend, their former coaches, their high school coaches, what can I say to get through to this athlete? And one of the things Dan Gable revealed that he did is he gave his wrestlers a questionnaire when they came to Iowa, similar to what we're talking about here. So you see, this is he was ranked top 10 coaches of the 20th century on ESPN Sports Century. All sports, top 10, he was named. And Gable, he asked these questions. One thing Gable said when I asked him about this at our coaches convention, for those of you that were not on it this past summer, was you have to be careful that the athlete doesn't just tell you what you want to hear. You want that athlete to be as honest and open as possible. I submit to you, the more the athlete is truthful and honest with you, the more fruitful this exercise is going to be, the more you're going to be able to help them. So your job as a coach, when you're doing this exercise, is to make the environment as comfortable as possible for the athlete and make them feel they can open up to you and you're here to help them. And if it's in line with the team, I want to give you what you need. So this way, at least the environment that the athlete's living in from dealing with the coaches, the coach-athlete perspective is strong. And the great thing about this is now, once you know this, you can share this information with your coaching staff. Now, one thing I will say, each coach, just like no two athletes are the same, no two coaches are the same either. If you're the head coach, your assistant coaches might have a different personality than you, or vice versa. If you're the assistant coach, the head coach might have a different personality. The point is this: your athlete may have different feedback for each coach, and don't take that personal. There's something to be said about how different temperaments jive with one another. Okay, so there's a thing that psychologists use called goodness of fit when you're speaking about parenting. Some parents have a natural good fit with certain kids. Now, that doesn't mean they can't be a good parent for the other children, but some kids, there's just a natural fit. Doesn't mean they love them more, doesn't mean they're better, or they shouldn't. It's what it comes down to is just there's a certain fit. They tend to parent, one temperament tends to parent this temperament well, okay? You could still be a very good parent for children of that other temperament, but you might have to put in a little more work, or you might have not even putting in more work. Sometimes you just might have to change your approach. Sometimes it is putting in more work. The point is this: make sure your athlete knows that different coaches, it's okay if you want different coaches treating you a little different. Coaches have different temperaments. You might have a really laid back, easygoing coach, maybe the opposite of my temperament. Well, maybe it's not so opposite, but someone who's very laid back, and maybe the wrestler doesn't mind having very direct feedback from that coach because their temperament kind of deflates it. They don't feel as pinned up against the wall. They don't feel as under attack. Whereas if you're a more strong and lively and interesting personality like myself, if you give direct feedback, that might be too confrontational for them. So I, as a coach, don't want to get offended if my athlete wants a different coach to treat them a little differently than I treat them. That's not personal. So as coaches, we need to be aware of that. So again, this is one of our best mindset lessons that we have. Listening to me does almost nothing. I say that because I don't want to be a thought-provoking speaker. I want to be an action-provoking speaker. I want you to take action on this. Make it a goal as a coach. That's one of the things in your direct control. You've heard us speak about the predator and prey mindset before. Predator animals, eyes on the front, like to hunt. Prey animals, eyes on the side, like to hide. Predator mindset means nothing more than control the controllables. Focus on what you can control. The prey mindset means nothing more than don't focus on things outside of your control. As a coach, one of the factors you have to, one of the things that you can directly control is having this conversation with your athlete. You don't have direct control on exactly how quality your relationship is with each athlete, because your athlete may not meet you halfway, right? The relationship is a two-way street, but you can sleep easy knowing that you did your end, you did your part by going through this exercise with your athletes and making them feel comfortable that this should be an ongoing conversation that we can now communicate with one another about, hey, what do I need? And again, just because you have that communication, I remember hearing brands talk about this, that having the communication, having that talk doesn't just mean, oh, okay, well, now we meet in the middle. That's not what it is. You're still the coach. They're still the wrestler. So you still may decide to go in another direction, but at least you hear them out. And for some athletes, just simply being given the respect to hear them out, that might be what they need. It can make you and the athlete get along much better, and it could bring out their potential. And at very least, you know you're not working against them because you have a better idea of what this athlete needs. So that's the mindset lesson I wanted to share with you for the day. Extremely practical. You could put it into practice, do it as early as you can. You want to know this information as long before the season as you can, so you can be ready for these athletes to give them what they need. And also, you might see your athlete might, as you're going through these questions and answers, the athlete might not exactly know what they want. And then you might say, well, hey, let's see, let me try a different approach with you. Or as the season goes on, you tell the athlete, oh, you're telling me that you want this, but one of the things I noticed as a coach is you seem to respond better to that. What do you think about that? I mean, ultimately, you and the athlete are on the same side of the table here. You're going after the same, I don't want to say problem, the same challenge. How do we bring out your best performance? It's you and the athlete trying to determine that. We have the same goal, your best performance and your well-being, right? So how do we make that happen? So having that communication is going to be big. Again, we have a lot of great mindset information. We have an individual program. Some of you coaches have kids that play a sport. Even outside of the sport of wrestling, we work with all sports. We also work with the San Francisco Conservatory of Music. We're featured speakers for the Huntington Learning Center. We have a weight loss mindset program. And we also work with Fortune 500 businesses. We change the mindset of businesses. So we work with sales teams. We work with musicians. We work with athletes. Some of your kids might want to work on mindset training. We're more than happy to do that. We have an individual mindset program that meets. So your kid would have a mindset coach meeting with them once a week over the phone. Simple. It's about a half hour a week. So it's a great investment, a great thing they could be involved with, really helps them get to the next level. So your kid is a mindset coach that's really thinking most about them. For your team, our team mindset program, it's an important thing. We meet as a group, ideally on a weekly basis. I want you to look at this more as strength training for the mind. If a one-time motivational speaker comes in, it might be entertaining, it might be thought-provoking, but what we're really after is long-term behavioral change. And you don't get that without consistent mindset training. We have the curriculum for that. We're more than happy to help you with it. Make sure you email us, mindset@wrestlingmindset.com, mindset@wrestlingmindset.com, or go through our Instagram page, our Wrestling Mindset Instagram page, about 60,000 followers. You can hit us up on Facebook, Twitter, whatever works best for you. We want to help you. But again, what that is we're working with your team. We meet as a group once a week, ideally, and we open the floor for any of your individuals to do mindset coaching with us. Now, that's not the same as the individual program. The individual program, we take that individual through the curriculum. When we open this up for your team, if they have any questions or thoughts, any doubts, fears, insecurities, we're happy to help them throughout the season. A benefit of having a mindset coach is that we're there to hold your team by the hand, the ups and downs of the season. Things go well. What should you be thinking? Things aren't going so well. What should you be thinking? There's a dispute on the team. We could help you mediate that. So the mindset coach is a strength coach for the mind. It needs to be consistent. And we found a lot of times some of our best teams, a lot of times the coaches, you're saying something similar to us. Sometimes it's important for the kids to hear it from someone else. And a lot of our best teams, They do even better in the second and third year. St. Cloud State, perfect example. They weren't national champs the first year we worked with them. The second year, the third year, the fourth year, then they started winning their national titles because now they're getting more and more familiar with the concepts, with our mindset principles, with our philosophies. So you want to get started. You want to give your team the mental edge. Our whole goal, our whole mission, and I really should have started this. You're supposed to begin with why. We want to use wrestling, the sport of wrestling, as a vehicle to build virtue and mental skills for life. That's the key. So our goal is the same as yours there. What we specialize in is giving the mental skills. So using wrestling as a vehicle to build virtue and mental skills for life. Think about any physical muscle in your body, your arms, your legs. If I asked you how to build stronger legs, what would you tell me? You would tell me to squat, deadlift, leg press, thigh curl, lunges, step ups. You can name off the leg exercises. If I asked you, how do you build confidence? What are the exercises? Do you know what they are? If I said, Coach, I'm a very nervous wrestler. What should I do to calm down? How do I relax? What concretely should I do? What are the exercises? What would you tell me? If you have a wrestler who's very, maybe a little too nice out there, they're not aggressive enough. They don't flip the switch like a lot of other wrestlers. They're practice room wrestlers. What do you tell them? What are the exercises to build aggression out there? A lot of coaches don't know, and it's not your fault. Most people weren't trained to do this. Well, with Wrestling Mindset, that is exactly what we do. We teach wrestlers how to be more confident, how to relax under pressure, and how to build aggressiveness. There's a systematic curriculum, a systematic program that's going to help each one of those different areas. We look at those as different mental muscles that it can absolutely be learned. So you want to make sure that at the end of the day, after your athlete's career, they left no stone unturned. They did everything they possibly could to reach their goals, whether it's wrestling, school, business, or life. I always say it, mindset makes the difference. Doesn't make a difference whether it doesn't matter whether you're taking the SATs or ACTs, you're in a job interview, or you're in a state championship wrestling match. Do you believe in yourself or not? On days where you're feeling tired, bored, or lazy in your job, in your school, in your wrestling, your sport, do you know how to make yourself more motivated? Do you know the exercises to make yourself more motivated? It doesn't matter what area of life it is. You need to have that mindset. So our mindset makes the difference in all those different areas. One thing I'd like all of you to do is to make sure you text mindset 1. So text the number. I want you to text this number 84576. So if you were going to pretend you were writing me a message, type in to the numbers 84576. And in the subject, I want you to write mindset and the number 1. That's our daily text message. Every day we're giving you free information. It's a free service for you. We have over 6,000 people, about 6,000 people across the country that are getting our daily text message. There's a Mindset Monday, a Toughness Tuesday challenge with Wednesday wisdom, a Thursday nutrition tip, a Friday Fitness Friday, a Saturday sale, and a Sunday story. Last week, we had our Mindset Monday. It was how to mentally approach cutting weight. Super practical for wrestlers, and it's all free. You should capitalize on that and pass that on to your team. Text the number 84576, and inside the body of the message, write mindset and the number 1. And we're going to be giving you great mindset information throughout the year. You need to be pumping your kids with positive information, and it's all wrestling specific. It'll help you get to your next goals. Make sure you reach out to us about team programming. We're happy to do a free introductory trial. I should have said that already, but any coaches on the call, we're happy to do an introductory 20 to 30 minutes free for your coaches, your athletes, and your parents. Bring them all in. Bring in your wrestling family, and we're happy to do a free introductory session. You can ask us any questions you want. We want everyone to be comfortable and know exactly what you're getting. And any of your kids that want to do our individual program, we're happy to help. Any of you that have a business, we're more than happy to take your business to their mindset to the next level. So I thank you very much for your time. Make sure you reach out to us. Email mindset@wrestlingmindset.com. Our website, of course, is wrestlingmindset.com. Take care. Have a great night.